Hello everyone, I'm Dragons After Dark, and welcome to the Pet Battle Report, your weekly news and information source for all things pet battle. This week we'll be going over the top 10 listed pets on Zufu's Pet Guides and some of their alternatives or closest replacements you can use in case you don't have any of these pets. Before we get into that though, let's go over everything going on this week on Azeroth and beyond for your pets. Blizzard has released the rewards for the March trading post, and the pet for this month is going to be the Pandaren Monk. It will go for 650 traders tender, so that is what you will have to look forward to once the trading post resets in the next couple days. It is also Pet Battle bonus week, and it will be Super Squirt for NA on March 4th or this Saturday. However, Squirt is not your only option for leveling. Keep an eye out on the daily reports for any repeatable Legion tamers that might come up. That way you can level both your pets and your characters. For assaults this week, we have the Necrolord Assault in the Maw, which offers you a chance to craft little A bomb, which is a crafted treasure that is up during the Necrolord Assault. It is up sometimes during other assaults, as in the Night Fae Assault, but for the most part it is listed as being up during the Necrolord Assault, and you do have a chance for fodder to drop from the Assault cache. On the Friday evening reset, it will be switching over to the Kyrian Assault, and you will have a chance to continue your progress toward Sly and the achievement A Sly Fox. The Sinfall Screecher pet does have a chance to come up. We're still not quite sure what's connected to make the treasure for this spawn, so it may or may not be up depending on what weeklies we have for that. And then from the Assault cache, we also have a chance of the Copperback Etherworm dropping. We also have Enzoth in Oldham this week, which means that the Pyre of the Amalgamated one has a chance to spawn as a bonus event. This bonus event is connected to the rare Amalgamation of Flesh, which has a chance to drop the Wicked Lurker pet, so again, check out those daily reports to see if the Pyre is up. And then Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, the Vol'dun Assault will be going on, and that's for the many fine heroes, where the Horde can get their rebuilt Mechanical Spider and the Alliance can get the rebuilt Gorilla Bot. And lastly, for the islands for the week, we have the Dread Chain, Rotting Mire, and Molten K, and then for the salvage, we have Dread Chain, Yorindal, and the Verdant Wilds. And that's it for this week. Nothing super duper new or interesting coming up except for the trading post switching over to its March rewards, so keep an eye out for that if that's something you're interested in. With that being said, let's move on to the top 10 most used pets and other pets that can stand in for them. Some of them might be better depending on the situation. Some of them are about as close as you're gonna get because the original pet might not have any direct alternatives. For number 10, we have Lil Bling. Aside from the knockoff Blingtron, which can be quite pricey and the drop rate's not too fantastic from the daily rewards from the Blingtron packages, it doesn't have any direct alternatives. One of the alternatives that we can look at for Little Bling, although as I said, it's not a direct alternative, is the Mechanical Cockroach. So the Mechanical Cockroach comes from the pet dungeon Nomergon, and it does cost one pristine gizmo or one of the dungeon currencies. And what's interesting about the Nomergon pets is that they are cageable, so there is a chance that you can find this pet on the auction house. I don't know how much it's going to go for depending on your realm. However, considering it's one of the only dungeons that has cageable pets, I imagine they might go for a pretty penny, which means it's going to be a choice between spending gold or spending time, because Nomergon is one of the longer pet dungeons. That being said, the reason I chose this one as an alternative for Lil Bling is that it does does have Stampede, and it's a mechanical pet. But what I like about this pet is that you can Stampede and then you can use Warning, which is basically the mechanical version of Feign Death. So you can Stampede and then you can hit Warning and it'll automatically swap in your highest health pet, and you can have that set up so that something comes in to really do some damage on whatever you're fighting with the one round of shattered defenses that remains. So that's kind of why this one is listed as an alternative. Of course, it is much slower than Lil Bling. The second pet I have listed as an alternative is the Rabid Nut Varmint 5000, and this pet comes from a pet battle. You can get them from Ashara, Stone Talon Mountains, or Winter Spring. It does come in multiple breeds, so it comes in 8 breeds. I have mine in the speed breed. I went out and got this one specifically in the speed breed because its speed in the speed breed is equal to Lil Bling. And the reason I chose this one as an alternative to Lil Bling is that it has the ability Rabid Strike. Rabid Strike functions a lot like Shattered Defenses. The enemy will receive 50% additional damage, the same as Shattered Defenses. The flip side of that, however, is the target will also deal 25% additional damage. So definitely don't use this alternative if you can't get hit more, like a lot more. The other thing that's nice is that we are seeing a lot of enemies come up that have really high speed stats, and this means that 325 speed on a player pet just isn't what it used to be when you're going up against enemies that have 350 speed or more. What's great about the Rabid Nut Varmint is that it has something called Overtune, which will increase your speed 100% for 2 rounds. That's probably going to overcome anything that's going to be faster than you. This way, what you can do is you can, when you're close to death or beforehand, you can use Overtune and Rabid Strike right before you die. That way you get the benefit of all 3 rounds of Rabid Strike once you die and your next pet comes in. It is also handy for the Rabid Nut Varmint's Thrash ability because remember, you get an additional hit with Thrash if you're faster. Rabid Strike and Overtune are the reasons I chose this one as a potential alternative for Little Bling. Like I said, the closest direct alternative is going to be that knockoff Blingtron. At number 9, we have the Dark Moon Zeppelin. Now, the problem with the Dark Moon Zeppelin is that its only alternative is going to be the Mechanical Pandaren Dragonling, and that is going to be a pet that we'll see on the list later. And whereas the Mechanical Pandaren Dragonling does have an alternative of sorts, they are really only going to be alternatives for each other. They have the closest in movesets, and you're not going to find anything that's truly comparable to their most used abilities that they have. You might be able to do a one-to-one ability replacement, like you can find another pet with Explode, or you can find another pet with Decoy, but at the end of the day, I don't think anything else really has Flyby, which is a weaker version of Shattered Defenses. It only increases the damage the enemy receives by 25%. There is another mechanical pet with Thunderbolt, I believe. However, for the most part, the Mechanical Pandaren Dragonling and the Dark Moon Zeppelin are going to be 2 sides of the same coin. The only real big difference is one of the abilities that they each have that are unique to them between the 2 of them, and the Mechanical Pandaren Dragonling is going to be faster, but it has less health for Explode, and the Dark Moon Zeppelin is going to be slower, but it has more health for Explode. Really depends if you're looking for speed so that you're faster and you can set Decoy up to do whatever you need to do, or if you can be slower and you're just looking to explode and you need a little more oomph than the Mechanical Pandaren Dragonling is going to provide for you. At number 8, we have the Emerald Proto-Whelp. The Emerald Proto-Whelp is a quintessential Dragonkin trooper. They have great longevity with Emerald Presence and with Emerald Dream, which will heal them over 3 rounds, generally getting them back to full health. And then of course you can choose between their slot 1 abilities, which are nice because they are from 2 different families. So you've got got Breath, which is from the Dragonkin family, and then Emerald Bite, which is from the Magic family. Two pretty much direct alternatives for the Emerald Proto-Whelp are the Dream Whelpling and the Emerald Whelpling. It's really going to depend on if you're looking for power or health. I believe the Emerald Whelpling has like over 1600 HP, and then the Emerald Proto-Whelp, most of those breeds come in power breeds, and I'm pretty sure the Dream Whelpling comes in mostly power breeds as well. And those three have kind of been a trifecta of longevity dragonkin pet. What's really been cool though is with Dragonflight, we got another sort of similar pet that came in, and that's the Jeweled Emerald Whelpling. Now, one of the nice things about the Jeweled Emerald Whelpling is it's pretty fast. It's got 325 speed, which is a big boost from the other three. And while it doesn't have Emerald Presence, it does have Jade Skin. So very similar to Emerald Presence. It does have Emerald Dream, but it also has Crystal Prison, which is a stun. And you can swap out, you can get an extra hit from your active pet. And then of course it's got Flame Breath instead of regular breath, and Flame Breath will do damage plus a dot, and then it has Claw. So while not a direct one-to-one alternative like with the Dream Whelpling and the Emerald Whelpling, it is a very viable alternative in the way that it has damage mitigation with Jade Skin, Emerald Dream, and then some great slot 1 attacks. It has the benefit of being faster than any of the other options. On to number 7, we have the Anubisath Idol. I'm going to let you know ahead of time, I don't like this pet. I am not a big fan of the idol pet at all, mostly because I don't like introducing RNG into a strategy myself. It's one thing if the enemy introduces RNG into the strategy, but I am not a fan of Sandstorm RNG, and I'm not a fan of abilities with variable damage, which is what you see with Crush. That being said, even I am willing to acknowledge that it is a useful pet to have. However, this is one of the pets we're going to go into that has a better alternative in some ways, and that's going to be the Void Scarred Anubisath. The Void Scarred Anubisath has the same sort of general setup you're going to see for the most part. With the Anubisath Idol, it's going to be Crush, Sandstorm, and Deflection. The difference with the Void Scarred Anubisath is going to be that it has Deflection, Sandstorm, and Takedown. Takedown is going to do less damage most likely than Crush. I don't know what the exact values are, but it's going to be steady. It's going to be consistent. It's a flat damage amount each time, which is always going to be my preference. And the Anubisath has the alternative in slot 1 for Demolish, which again, I don't like using Demolish if I haven't introduced an ability from another pet that mitigates the RNG. If it's a humanoid fight, I will usually bring in one of the Murlocs for Lucky Dance and then swap over to the Anubisath and use Demolish. I will never advocate using 50% hit chance abilities without some kind of hit modifier to make sure that they hit. On the other hand, the Void Scarred Anubisath has Spirit Fire Bolt, which I believe it has varying damage, but the point is that it is a magic ability, which is really great. It gives us a different alternative for slot 1 if we come up against something like a flyer, which is really nice. In slot 2, the Anubisath Idol also has Stone Skin, which doesn't see a whole lot of use, whereas on the Void Scarred Anubisath we have Soul Rush, which again, if you're going against a flying pet, can be really great. And sometimes you'll see the idol use Rupture. Generally in slot 3 you're always going to see Deflection, and then we have Deflection in slot 3 for the Void Scarred Anubisath with the alternative of Creeping Insanity. Creeping Insanity is an investment ability, whereas Rupture is going to be a more direct ability. Rupture, I guess, is the the only way that the idol would come out ahead of the Void's Guard Anubisath. Now, a couple of tangential alternatives, so they're not going to be direct alternatives, but they do give you kind of options. One of those is the Renishu Runt. One of the reasons I like the Runt as an alternative to the idol is because we do have an ability that increases our hit chance, which will mitigate the RNG hit chance from Sandstorm. So Sandstorm reduces your hit chance by 10% for everyone who's active on the field. The Renishu Runt has focus, so it increases your speed, hit, and critical strike chance for your runt by 25% for 5 rounds. So with the runt speed, that puts them at about 325. That's why I recommend the Renishu Runt as an alternative if the focus of the strategy is Sandstorm. Now, obviously, if the focus is I need something that can use deflection to avoid stuff plus Sandstorm, then the Runt's not going to be what you're looking for because it's purely going to be a Sandstorm alternative in relation to the Anubisath idol. Now, the Renishu Runt has other great uses for it depending on the fight, but as an alternative for the idol, it's a Sandstorm only alternative with the added benefit of having the focus ability. And as another Sandstorm alternative, we have the Cursed Dune Watcher. There's only truly one reason I really like this pet, and that's for its speed. So it comes in at 326, which is kind of just enough speed to overcome anything that's sitting at 325. So it's very cheeky, and I kind of like it that way. But you can also use Sandstorm, you're faster. It has Stone Skin, just like the Anubisath idol, which means you can help mitigate damage on top of the damage that Sandstorm is mitigating. And then it has Punch. It is the better version of Crush because it doesn't have variable damage, it just has a flat damage value. But it also has Stone Shot, which is an elemental attack, and that can be handy if you're going against some mechanicals. The Cursed Dune Watcher, kind of just like the Run, is going to be a Sandstorm only alternative, and when you're looking for something faster that just needs to get in and hit a couple times really quick, because it doesn't have a whole lot of health. I think it's got over just over 1,000 HP, so not much going on there. But those are going to be all the alternatives for the Anubisath idol. In 6th place, we have the Nexus Whelpling, one of the most used wild pets that we have in the game. It hits like an absolute truck, especially if you get it in the power breed. Generally, you're going to see Arcane Storm, Mana Surge, and Tail Sweep slotted for this pet. Usually, Arcane Storm and Mana Surge are just going to eat through whatever's in front of you, especially if you're going against flying pets. In light of the Arcane Storm and Mana Surge abilities being in different slots, the Nexus Whelpling does have 2 direct alternatives. You have the Stormborn Whelpling, which has Arcane Storm, Mana Surge, and Tail Sweep. Just like the Nexus Whelpling, it is a drop in Stormheim, which means we got this pet during Legion. It also has Call Lightning and Thunderbolt and Frost Breath, which can all be useful depending on the situation, but just as a Nexus Whelpling alternative, it has the same exact moveset. So if you don't want to go out and get 2 Nexus Whelplings, even though the strategy you're using calls for it, you can generally just slot in a Stormborn Whelpling instead of the second Nexus Whelpling, and you'll be fine. In Dragonflight, we got another almost direct alternative with Stormy. It has Arcane Storm and Mana Surge, but then it also has Jolt and Claw. Jolt can be problematic because it has a 1-round cooldown, so unless you're timing things kind of well, you might need to pass for a round. And then Claw it's one of those abilities that has variable damage. It's sort of a direct alternative, it just doesn't have Tail Sweep. Now, one of the reasons the Nexus Whelpling is so powerful is not just its power stat, it's its Dragonkin racial. When the Dragonkin hit an enemy and they are below 50% HP, they get the Dragonkin buff, which increases the damage that they do to the enemy by 50%. After they do the extra 50% damage hit, then they have to hit again at them below 50% HP, and then they will get the buff again, and so on and so forth. This makes the Arcane Storm Storm Mana Surge combo really powerful because Mana Surge gets to hit twice if Arcane Storm is active. Now, to a lesser degree, we have two sort of alternatives. The reason they're not quite as good is because they come from different families, so they don't get the benefit of that Dragonkin buff, and that's the Infused Ether Worm, which is a drop during the Ardenweald Maw Assault from the Ether Worm cage. One of the reasons this one can almost stand in for the Dragonkin buff is you can hit Arcane Storm and then Flyby and then hit Mana Surge because the Infused Ether Worm has Flyby. If you have enough time to get all of that set up, then you will be hitting Mana Surge with that 25% extra damage for 3 rounds, which can be really handy. And another out-of-family alternative is going to be Lady Feathersworth. So Lady Feathersworth is the meta achievement reward we have received from the Dragonflight family battler. Obviously, it's not a Dragonkin pet, it is from the Magic family, which means the advantage it has is the fact that it can't be dealt more than 35% of its health per attack, so that can be handy depending on your situation. Its speed's not too fantastic, but to be fair, neither is the Nexus Whelpling, but it does have Arcane Storm and Mana Surge. And if you're not faster, thankfully it does have Peck slotted, and if you are faster, you can slot Quills. So that's sort of another option for you if you don't have the Nexus Whelp, or if you want to use its abilities but you need something that's not a Dragonkin, like you're making a Magic family strat or a Flyer strat with the Infused Ether Worm. But that's going to be all of the alternatives for the Nexus Whelpling. With that, we're halfway through the list, and I'm going to take a short break and go over our pet spotlight for the week. And this spotlight features kind of more of an ability than a single pet itself. The pets are going to be the spider pets from Zereth Mortis, which are the archetype of Predation, Tyrachnid Ambusher, and the Tyrachnid Stalker. One of the reasons I really like these pets is I love their new ability, Devour the Weak, and the fact that most of these spiders are pretty speedy, which is really nice, especially if you're going against critters, which can tend toward speedy if you've got things like bunnies or anything like that. Doesn't mean you'll always be faster, but it can be nice to have. What's also great is that each of these pets offers their own unique take on their ability set. Just to give a quick overview on how Devour the Weak works, is it does increased damage depending on what is affecting the enemy pet. If they are webbed and poisoned, you get 2 extra hits from Devour the Weak. So let's say it does 200 damage. If it doesn't have anything on the enemy pet, it'll do 200 additional damage if it's webbed, and then another 200 additional damage if it's also poisoned. What I really like about these pets is that the devs didn't hobble them in any way. They gave them the potential to use Devour the Weak to its fullest ability on all of these pets. As an example, one of the things that irritates me about certain pets' movesets is that they aren't cohesive, right? You've got pets that have maybe Maul and a Bleed slotted in the same slot. That's probably not a perfect example. I can't think off the top of my head any of them that have that. Or Call Darkness and Nocturnal Strike in the same slot. They're not cohesive. They're just sort of a jumble, and you have to have additional pets in order to set things up for your one pet to come in and use this one ability. I love when pets have cohesive movesets. So they all have a poison in a slot, they all have a web of some sort in a slot, and then they all have Devour the Weak. So they all have the potential to use this ability, and I love it. I love the cohesion. And that's kind of why I wanted to go over the new spider pets. They were actually some of the pets that I was excited to get out of Zereth Mortis. And thinking of it, there were quite a few pets from Zereth Mortis I actually really like. I love the Ambistans, or basically the axolotl pets. I love all of those as well. I love some of the chicken pets, especially the one that is the only pet that has both Maul and Bleed in separate slots on them, and you don't need a setup pet to be able to use the Maul ability. It can do it all on its own. Overall, there's a lot of pets from Zereth Mortis I really like, despite not necessarily liking the zone or the expansion or the patch itself. However, this week we were going over the spider pets, so again, that's the archetype of predation, the Terracnid Ambusher, and the Terracnid Stalker. If you're looking for something that is going to absolutely chew through some critters, I 100% recommend these pets. And even if you're not going against critters, they're still really good. It can still hit wonderfully. But that's going to be it for the pet spotlight for the week. Moving on, we have the top 5 pets based on the Zoofu's website ranking for the most used pets. Now, just a disclaimer, some of you might go over to the most used pets list and go, dragons, you seem to be missing some of them. And some of them are going to overlap. I'm using some of the ones in the list as alternatives for other pets. Some of them are only in the top amount of pets because of special circumstances, like the Falcosaur pets, which pop up in a lot of strategies because you have to have quests using them, or the Elec plushie. Like, obviously the Elec plushie is not going to be in the top 10 of the battleable pets. Like, no shade to anyone who loves their Elec plushie, but you can't hurt anything with it, so I didn't count it. So that's why this list is sort of an amalgamation of what's likely to be the top 10. But let's get started. At number 5, we already talked about the mechanical Pandaren Dragonling being the only alternative for the Darkmoon Zeppling. We do have a sort of alternative for the Pandaren Dragonling with the timeless mechanical Dragonling, and I talked about them in our first episode of the podcast. I love them. The reason I considered them an alternative for the mechanical Pandaren Dragonling is prior to the timeless mechanical Dragonling coming in, we didn't really have a good mechanical pet against magic pets. The mechanical Pandaren Dragonling is nice, but it does variable damage. It doesn't have a whole lot of power because it's got more speed, and those two things combined can bring in a little too much RNG. However, the timeless mechanical Dragonling has Flame Breath, which does damage, and that might hit their 35% threshold, but the dot won't, and the dot will keep ticking. And while the mechanical Pandaren Dragonling has Flyby, which does a percent increased damage against the enemy, 25%, the timeless mechanical Dragonling has Razor Talons, so in a way, those two abilities are not the same, but sort of the same. They help do increased damage against the enemy, and the timeless mechanical Dragonling has an insane power stat that additional damage from Razor Talons will maybe do more damage than just having the 25% from the mechanical Pandaren Dragonling. And also the timeless mechanical Dragonling has Decoy. It's arguable on how useful this is, mostly because it's very slow. With blocking things, generally you're going to want to be faster. The MPD does have an advantage there as far as speed goes, but it does have Decoy as an option for it to be an alternative. In 4th place, we have Chrominius. Now, Chrominius is another one of those pets that does not have any direct alternatives. We do not have any Dragonkin that have a damage modifier like Howl plus Surge of Power. The closest you can get is perhaps striking an enemy with one of the other pets below 50% so that they get their Dragonkin buff and then hit with Surge of Power, but that is not going to do nearly as much damage as Howl plus Surge of Power. The closest thing we have from another family is going to be the infused Ether Worm. I mentioned them with the Nexus Whelpling as an alternative with Arcane Storm and Mana Surge. However, it can sort of be an alternative with Chrominius, where you've got Flyby and Surge of Power, but really, if you're looking for an alternative and you're looking at something doing damage, the only reason the infused Ether Worm comes out ahead of Dragonkins with Surge of Power is the fact that you don't have to wait to get the enemy below 50% health to get your damage percent buff, right? You can come in on a fresh enemy, hit Flyby, and hit Surge of Power. That probably won't kill them, but I mean, if they're low enough health and they're a flyer, maybe. So that might be the closest outside of the family to Chrominius. It doesn't really have a direct alternative alternative as far as like Surge of Power and Howl goes. Now there are other alternatives for it that do not include Surge of Power. So you've got Bright Paw and Gizmo. Bright Paw is a shop pet, and Gizmo is a pet that you can get from Shadowlands, who have Prowl and Arcane Dash, which is super duper powerful against flyers and arguably does just about or more damage than Howl and Surge of Power, but I was kind of trying to keep it in the same abilities category. But if you're looking for something that's not going to have that recovery for 2 rounds after Surge of Power, then I would definitely look for Gizmo, or if you're into shop pets, Bright Paw. In 3rd place, we have the Unborn Valkyr, arguably one of the most valuable wild pets we have access to. The Unborn Valkyr is another pet that doesn't have any direct alternatives, so we can break her abilities up and I can give you some alternatives for some of her abilities, but generally speaking, you're not going to find anything with her exact combination of stuff. So you're not going to have anything that can do Curse of Doom and Haunt. You're not going to have anything that can do Curse of Doom and Unholy Ascension. Like I said, we kind of have to break them up to be able to find alternatives for her. As I said, one of the biggest combinations the Unborn Valkyr is known for is Curse of Doom and Haunt. The reason is that Curse of Doom is an investment ability that does big damage after 4 rounds, and then Haunt does 4 rounds of damage and haunts the target, which means that after 4 rounds, the Unborn Valkyr will come back to life. The closest thing you're going to find to that combination is going to be the Decaying Maw Rat. So the Decaying Maw Rat doesn't have Curse of Doom, but it does have Creeping Insanity. Depending on what you're fighting, the Decaying Maw Rat might be the better option. Basically, you can slot Creeping Insanity and Haunt on this pet. It is going to be faster than the Unborn Valkyr, so its speed stat is going to be 284, and I don't know if the health speed breed is going to have more power than the Valkyr, but the power speed breed surely does. So that's a viable alternative if you don't specifically need Curse of Doom because you're fighting a humanoid. If you're not fighting a humanoid, then the Decaying Maw Rat can be a viable, sometimes better alternative if you need something that's faster than the enemy to make sure that Haunt happens. Because if your pet is dead, it cannot use Haunt. Obviously, the Decaying Maw Rat is a critter, so if it gets killed, it doesn't have a resurrection round. So obviously, no, it's not going to be able to use Haunt. But Haunt is an ability that will not land if your pet is not alive. If your undead pet is in its immortal round where it comes back to life, Haunt won't hit. Now, as for Curse of Doom, the usual method, like I said, is Curse of Doom, Haunt, or Unholy Ascension. The reason this is nice is that it gets the Unborn Valkyr out of the way, so you can bring your next pet in to set something up to make sure that Curse of Doom hits really hard, or set something up for the next pet. Keeping that in mind, like I said, no direct alternatives. The closest thing we're gonna see is the Wayward Spirit with Curse of Doom and Fade. What's nice about Curse of Doom and Fade is, one, the Wayward Spirit has a lot more power and a lot more speed than the Unborn Valkyr. So if the focus is really in on the Curse of Doom and not necessarily the Unholy Ascension or the Haunt, then you can do Curse of Doom and Fade, but that's probably going to be the closest you're going to get to hitting Curse of Doom and then removing the pet from the situation so that the next pet can come in and set something up. As for Unholy Ascension from the Unborn Valkyr, you've got a few options. It's really going to depend again on what you're trying to do. If the focus is just for Unholy Ascension, the Drowned Hatchling is really nice because it's very, very fast. This means you can generally get Unholy Ascension applied to the team before the other team can do anything, and that can be really helpful depending on the fight. It also has Ghostly Bite, so if you want to do a big hit ability before you Unholy Ascension, you can. The same for the Ghostly Skull. It has Ghostly Bite and Unholy Ascension, or Spectral Strike if they're blinded or have darkness up, although 100% don't recommend having darkness up when you're trying to make sure the team gets hit by something, because Unholy Ascension will miss if darkness is up and it has the 10% chance to miss. But outside of those two pets, there's not too terribly many alternatives in the way of Unholy Ascension for the Unborn Valkyr. Truly, this pet is basically one of a kind for what it can do, and as I've shown you from all of the pets I've listed, it takes a lot of pets to compensate for this one pet. So I don't see the Unborn Valkyr being foisted from its spot of importance in the top 3 anytime soon. In slot 2, probably to no one's surprise, we have the Iron Starlet. Generally, what the Iron Starlet is used for is wind up, supercharge, wind up. You will see it using other moves. Generally, it's better to slot Powerball in slot 2 if you're going to want to set up for another wind up, supercharge, wind up, because Toxic Smoke will consume your supercharge, so you can do wind up, supercharge, wind up, Powerball, wind up, supercharge, wind up, or however you want to work it out if your pet lasts that long, which depending on the fight, sometimes it does. Keeping that in mind, it's basically a bomb pet, right? So you're setting up for this really big hit that's hopefully going to take the enemy pet out. And in terms of that, we have one direct alternative with the Runeforged Servitor. So the Runeforged Servitor also has wind up, supercharge, wind up. It does come in only one breed, so it is a little easier. The breeds can get kind of funky with the Iron Starlets because there's so many of them, and depending on the fight will depend on whether you need one to have more health or it has just enough health, so you need the power breed, or maybe you need the health breed, which generally no one advocates for the health breed, so probably don't. However, as I said, Runeforged Servitor, direct substitute as long as you don't need a power breed, wind up, supercharge, wind up, you're good to go. If you're looking for other pets that have a similar capacity, not necessarily the same ability, the microbots with supercharge and ion cannon will also work to generally one-shot things, especially beast pets. And the same can be said for the Tranquil Mechanical Yeti with supercharge and call lightning. If you're going against a beast pet, those are indirect options as well. And last but certainly not least, we have Icky. Icky is the quintessential pet that pretty much everyone should have on their roster. Even after the Black Claw and Shattered Defenses nerfs, it's still a very powerful pet. On fights where it was overkill to use Black Claw and Flock, nothing needed to be changed. On other fights, maybe you needed one more hit beyond that to finish off whatever you were fighting. It's still very powerful, and that's where Icky's advantage comes in, is their power, and they do start out faster. That being said, generally once they lose their flying racial buff, they are no longer faster, which can be problematic because that's where the RNG comes in with Icky. If you need Icky to finish maybe all 3 rounds of Flock, but they get hit and they're slower, and there's this like finger cross moment like, oh gosh, please don't hit them more and still let me finish my Flock. That's kind of what Icky's like. Icky's a bit of a glass cannon. That being said, there are basically direct alternatives for Icky. So you have Foul Feather, and I have a speed breed of Foul Feather for when I just need something that's going to be able to go all 3 rounds of Flock and leave 2 rounds of Shattered Defenses on the enemy. The speed breed of Foul Feather comes in at I think over 300 speed, which can be super handy when it's more important that Shattered Defenses has 2 rounds left on the enemy so that the next pet can come in and do really nice damage as well. We also have the Zandalari. So the Zandalari are similar to Icky in that they have Black Claw and Hunting Party. The downside to Hunting Party is it only lasts for 2 rounds, which can be good or bad. Sometimes only lasting for 2 rounds means you get to do something else when otherwise you'd be stuck doing basically a Flock type ability. However, this also means that their Shattered Defenses also only lasts for 1 round. So if you're on a Zandalari Raptor, either the Ankle Render or the Knee Biter, and you're slow slower, that can cause a problem if you only have one round of shattered defenses and you're killed before you can make use of that because you're slower. There are speed breeds of this pet. They come in at 341 speed, which is very speedy, especially for a beast pet. And that can be sort of another advantage of the Raptor over Icky, is it's got that flat speed. So if you've got the speed breed, you're going Black Claw, you're doing both rounds of Hunting Party, and you've been hit below 50% of your health, that means that you have an increased percentage of damage to your attacks. So when they're hit below 50% of their health, they deal 25% extra damage. And so when you start leaping or whatever your other slot is, it's going to hit for more if you've been hit below that 50% threshold. And another alternative that we got in Battle for Azeroth was the Chitterspine Skitterlings. Generally, if you're going out to capture this pet, I would recommend getting the speed breed. The power speed and speed balance might be used in one or two fights here and there. And just like Icky and Foulfeather, you've got Black Claw and Swarm, which does 3 rounds of damage, will leave 2 rounds of shattered defenses, and as long as you're faster, you're leaving those 2 rounds of shattered defenses on the enemy for your next pet, or it just cleans it up right there and you don't even have to worry about it. But that's going to be the condensed top 10 pets over on Zufu's Pet Guides. Do you agree with the top 10 that I have here, and do you agree with the alternatives? Were there some pets you heard about that maybe you didn't even consider as an option for certain things? Let me know in the comments below. And speaking of our top 10 pets, our strategy spotlight for the day comes from Jellyfish on Zufu's Pet Guides. They use Icky against the oldest Dragonfly World Quest or against Enyoban for a quick 5-round, 43-second strategy where Icky basically single pets the fight. And just like the strategy, that pet spotlight is super quick. There's not much more to say about it. In fact, I've probably talked longer than the strategy takes to complete. So thank you very much, Jellyfish, and thank you for your strategy. As for our add-on spotlight this week, that would be Derangements Pet Battle Cooldowns. Now, what's nice about Derangements is that it tracks both the buffs, debuffs, and abilities for active and inactive enemy pets. It's a really handy tool for strategy creation and just in general. If you come across strategies that say, keep track of when the enemy has so many rounds left on this ability on cooldown, this is the add-on that's going to help you with that. I can't recommend it enough. I will say I'm not sure if the CurseForge files have been updated, but I know you can get the updated files on the Warcraft Pets Discord in the add-on section. So a big thank you to Mutanus for updating that add-on for us into Dragonflight so that we can still use it. That's going to be it for me this week. I'll have all the pertinent links available on my tweet for the podcast, as well as in the description once it's uploaded to YouTube. Until next time, I hope you all have a fantastic rest of your day or night. Best of luck and happy battling!